Join us as we make the gem holder.
Dun, dun, dun. Last year, early in the year, we took a family road trip to Alabaster Caverns State Park. And unfortunately, we don't have any photos of us going through the caves, but we did get a souvenir. And we'd like to talk to you about what we did with that souvenir today.
It was always a hobby for me to collect rocks wherever I go. When we went to Alabaster Caverns, I saw these gems and I asked Jason, I was like, what can we do with these? I love them, but I don't know what we can do with them. And he mentioned that they are able to glow when you light them up. And so I was like, oh, that's perfect. Let's get some and decide what we want to do with them later on.
So what we're going to go through today is how we made, let's see if I can point to it, this right here, a holder for the gemstones that lights up and is battery powered. Join us today.
Selenite crystals naturally occur in the Alabaster Caverns, but the ones that we purchased at the shop did not specifically come from those caverns. But the thing that I did like about the selenite crystals in the shape that we chose is they kind of mimic each other a little bit. They're not exactly the same, but they're kind of in that same columnar shape.
So these gems, they glow a lot like fiber optics do. When you light them from one side, the light travels all the way through it. So we wanted to find a way to highlight them against a natural pattern or a random pattern. So that's what we tried to figure out. So we drew a couple options in Fusion 360. Many of the ones that we drew, we just didn't like. They didn't work. They didn't fit good.
This shape that we drew, I didn't really like it because it didn't really feel natural. It did in the different elevations, but just in the overall shape, it didn't feel like something that I would see out in nature.
So the next shape we went was a little more of a polished gemstone. So something you might see that's been refined and into crystals, and overall we just didn't like it either. It felt too polished. So we started thinking back to some of those natural formations that we'd seen. So Devil's Tower came to mind. And Devil's Tower, the structure of it is made from an extinct volcano, but it leaves behind this really wonderful pattern called
columnar jointing.
Don't know if we're saying that right or not. But these columns come across and they are very regular in shape, but the way they break and the way they come apart is very irregular. And so we looked at some of these and settled on a hexagon style pattern. We used that to create a pattern that was reoccurring but somewhat irregular by the different heights that we used for it. So we drew this up in Fusion 360. This one's going to be machined on our CNC, but what we really liked about it was the way that we could play with it in the different areas and get those varying heights and how the shadows kind of played off of it. So we'll go through the process we went through on creating this pattern. We took some scrap wood we had, laid it on the bench, tried to get an idea of what kind of shape we wanted. We knew the size of the holder we wanted to create, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with colors and the different wood textures. So we played around a little bit. What we ended up coming up with was just solid walnut scraps, a little bit varying in textures, because we didn't want a lot of contrast. You know, we played with a little bit of the pecan offcuts we had. We just didn't feel like we liked it.
We didn't want to take away from the crystals themselves, and somebody really focused on that wood. So we wanted something to really bring out that contrast of the colors. So we put our block of walnut pieces that we glued together on the CNC so that it could start running its program that we had created for it. While it's running, we go ahead and step to the side and do some other projects in the garage while keeping an eye on it.
And this is one of those things that a CNC is wonderful for. We don't have to sit there and watch every little step. We're in the area, we babysit it, but it allows it to do the work, and we don't have to do every single part of it. The other piece that we cut at the same time was just something else to attach our lights to.
For our lighting options, we had several pieces of LED light strips left over from other projects, and so we pulled those out to see what light we preferred with our lamp. We had one that we could change to red, blue, or green. We had a white LED strip, and we had one that we bought that could change multiple colors, multiple flashes, In the end, we decided we just wanted to go with the straight white because we felt that that is what celebrated the crystals the best.
A couple other things we considered here too. The multicolored RGB lights that Melissa just mentioned, it was going to be very hard to get them to actually mount to that small piece of wood we just talked about. However, the white light that we used is actually a Harbor Freight click lamp that you usually get for free with a coupon. We have few of them around, like 5. So not a big thing for us to go ahead and rip it apart and use all the components, including the battery tray and the switch, to make this. So that's what we decided to do. We proceeded to dissect and tear apart the Harbor Freight lamp. Took it over the bench, cut it apart with a multi-tool, and laid out how we wanted it to sit in the wood block.
The next step that we had to do, Jason worked on routing out the holes on the bottom for the battery pack and the light strip.
Once all the work was done on the base, a couple coats of spray lacquer, and she was finished and ready to assemble. This was very simple. We didn't have to add any components or take any components away. We just took everything off the boards, soldered it together in one piece, and reassembled everything into the base itself. Assembly went really well. Everything went back together as the way it came out. The wires were soldered together, wrapped in heat shrink, and then we used a lot of hot glue to basically pot everything together. You'll see me using a chunk of aluminum. That's a quick trick to actually help set the glue faster. A cold piece of aluminum will suck up the heat really well, and it won't actually bond to the hot glue. So that way you get a nice flat base when we have a large pool of hot melt glue. Last step we did was just check to make sure everything still functioned.
The final step was us mixing the epoxy so that we could adhere the crystals onto the light. I hope you enjoyed us creating a lasting memory from our trip to Alabaster Caverns. It doesn't light up a whole room, but it does give a little ambiance to the room and is special for us as well.
Thank you for joining us.